Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawalah. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome you again into another lecture of Al-Hadith subject. We covered in the last lecture the Ahad and Mutawatir of Hadith. We also mentioned that the Hadith of Ahad is divided into Gharib, stranger, that comes through one route, and Aziz, which depending on how you look at it, it could mean the rare one or the strong one, and that comes into 2 or 3 routes, and then the Mashhur, that comes into more than 3 routes. Now, a point about this is that the Hadith takes its description from the least amount of narrators in any level of the Hadith, of the narration of Hadith. For example, if Hadith is narrated by 1 Sahabi and 3 Tabi'i and 10 Tabi'i Tabi'in, then that Hadith is called Gharib because it came through only 1 Sahabi. Another Hadith, let's say it came through 3 Sahabis and then 10 Tabi'in and then 100 of Tabi'i Tabi'in. This Hadith is called the Aziz because it came through 3 narrators on the top. So you look at all the levels of narration, wherever there is the least number of narrators, this is where the Hadith takes its description being, as we said, Mashhur or Aziz or Gharib. We also talked about Ahad Hadith being divided into the Maqbul, accepted, and the Mardud, rejected. The Maqbul one will be subdivided into the Sahih for its own, Sahih with support, Hasan on its own, and then Hasan with support. And the rejected one, that will include all the Da'if. And we started talking about the conditions of the Hadith Sahih, and we mentioned there are 5 conditions for the Hadith Sahih. First one is the continuous narration, and then trustworthy narrators all over the Sanad, and then those narrators being of high accuracy, top accuracy in their narration, and then the lack of shudud, deviation, and the lack of illah, hidden weakness. And we explained the first 3 conditions of the Hadith Sahih. So inshallah today we will continue. Now, from the last lecture, we note that the 2 conditions of trustworthiness and the accuracy of the narrator, those 2 conditions relate to the narrators of the Hadith. And according to those 2 conditions, the narrators of Hadith were divided into levels, into groups. Now, the first group will include narrators who are trustworthy, obviously, but also they're of the highest level of accuracy. Now, to make this easy, although the scholars at the time did not use percentages, but we'll try to make it easy for us to understand because nowadays we all talk about percentages. So let's think of those, the top ones, as ones who are 95 to 98% accurate with their narration. That's level 1, top. Those are the only ones that we consider the Hadith to be Sahih, and we'll go into this in more details shortly. So that's level 1. Now those narrators are given descriptions by the ulama in Arabic. For example, thiqa, thabt. Thiqa means trustworthy, but in that context, they add the trustworthiness to the perfect memorization or perfect precision in the narration. Or they call them thabt, steadfast. Okay, so those 2 terms will usually be used by the scholars to describe those top narrators. Now, for level 2 of the narrators, they will all the narrators in level 2 maintain their trustworthiness. However, the accuracy of the narration starts getting less and less as we go lower in level 2. We have the top of level 2, and those are people who will narrate about 80 to 95% accurate. So those will be usually called saduq, truthful. Now we go one step less, then we start going into someone they call sheikh. Although sheikh for us is high status, but for them when they say about someone sheikh in the hadith, that means someone who narrates 60 to 80% correct. Now as we go less than sheikh, then we start having people who narrate less than 50% correct. And those will be called soft, layyinul hadith, or will be called weak in his hadith, da'if in his hadith, or will be called something like not strong or anything like that. Any term that refers to their hadith being not as accurate as the others. Now for level 3, then the trustworthiness is lost. So those will be called liars, kadhab. Those will be called saqat al-hadith, fallen. It's because they were known to be liars, so their hadith will basically be called fabricated because it's coming from a liar. Now once we understand those levels of narrators, then it will become easy for us to understand what is sahih on its own, what is sahih with support, what is hasan on its own, and what's hasan with support. For sahih on its own, which is usually just called sahih, this is where all the narrators of the hadith are from level 1, the top ones. This is called hadith sahih. So Imam Bukhari in his book only used those narrators. That's why we say his book is the most accurate book after the book of Allah, Al-Quran. So he only used those top ones. That's why when we say Imam Bukhari, he took the most authentic of the authentic hadith. So Sahih of Imam Bukhari did not include all the authentic hadith, but it took the top of the authentic hadiths. So Sahih is top narrators, level 1. Now Sahih with support is where the narrator, if there is now we start going to level 2, but the top of level 2, the narrators who narrate 80 to 95%. Now if we have one route that has narrators of that level only, then this is not sahih, because remember we said the conditions of hadith sahih is for the narrators to be of top notch narrators, tam al-dhabt. So this hadith will not be sahih. Now how about if we get two routes or more, where we have two of those narrators who narrate 80 to 95% correct. So now we know that this hadith is very, very strong, because those two they're not bad. 80 to 95% is really good. Now it can't be possible that they both made the same mistake. That's why this hadith that usually gets narrated by level 2 top narrators, coming from multiple routes, having narrators at this level, will be called sahih with support, sahihun li ghayrihi. So this hadith is sahih because it's got some other thing to support it, which is the other narration that came at the same level, and because it does not fit 100% into the sahih on its own, then it gets called sahih with support. Now for the hadith hasan, this is when we get the hadith narrated by narrators of the top of the level 2. At the top of level 2, this is what we call the saduq, the truthful ones, narrating 80 to 95% accurate, but it's coming through only one narration with narrators of that level. Now this cannot be sahih and cannot be sahih with support, because there's nothing to support it to get to the level of sahih. Then it's called hasan. Now what is hasan with support? This is when we start getting lower. This is where we're getting the 60 to 80% narration, like narrators narrating hadiths, but it comes through multiple routes. On its own, if there's only one narration which has the 60 to 80% narrators in it, then that's called da'if, weak. But because it came through multiple routes, but all the narrators are at that level, then that's called hasan with support. So it only managed to get into the hasan by the multiple routes that it came with. Otherwise, it will be in the da'if. So that's what we call Hasan with support. Now that we understood those terms, let's go back and finish the remaining two conditions of the Hadith Sahih. The lack of deviation, shudud, and the lack of illah, hidden weakness. Now what does shudud, deviation, means? This is when a hadith is narrated by one of the top-notch narrators, level 1. However, in his narration to this hadith, his narration does not fit with the other top-notch narrators narrating the same hadith. This is where we can tell that there is a problem here. There is a mistake by this top-notch narrator. That's why we said 95 to 98%, because there's no one perfect and we all make mistakes, and despite being top narrator, they'll still make mistakes. We're all human beings. But how do we identify this? We identify this by comparing the different narrations for the hadith. And this is where those hidden problems will start to appear. Because when you look to the hadith just in general, it's continuous narration narrated by top imam or top narrator, then that must be a hadith sahih. But once you compare it, then you find there's a problem here. Now what's illah, hidden weakness? Again, it's similar to shudud. When you look at the hadith, it looks perfect, it looks sahih. However, with very detailed inspection by an expert, they will identify that there's a problem in this hadith, and it's also obvious when they compare the different narrations. For example, when they look at the sanad looks continuous, but then when they compare the narrations, they see that there's a narrator in the middle that was not originally mentioned by the original sheikh. The student may have put by mistake a narrator in the middle because his sheikh used to narrate, most narrations of his sheikh comes through that route. So he made a mistake, and for this hadith where the sheikh did not mention that narrator, the student puts the narrator name by mistake. So still the narrator is trustworthy and he's top-notch narrator. However, he made a mistake there because this narrator was not mentioned by the sheikh, because that's what they find out when they take different narrations from other students who narrated from this sheikh the same hadith. So then it's obvious there is a narrator that's been added here, and that will change the hadith from continuous narration to a broken narration, because there's a defect, there's a lag there in the narrators. And then that means that the hadith does not have continuous narration. So that means that this hadith then becomes da'if. It's not sahih anymore. So this is what we mean. This is why it's hidden. It's not picked up by immature hadith scholars. It's only the people who are experts in that field. And that's why not every hadith scholar is an expert in that field. They need years and years of practice and be aware of all the problems that comes with hadith and all those sorts of things, so that they will be able to identify those problems. Now, let me tell you something. When you look at the scientists of hadith, you see that they were to memorize the da'if hadith as well, even the lied, the fabricated ones. They used to memorize them. So someone saw Yahya bin Ma'in, who's a scholar of hadith obviously, and he's more into the jarh and ta'dil. He's the one who used to give verdicts about the narrators. They saw him sitting to someone who they know he's very, very weak in his hadith. He's even a liar. They said, why are you sitting? And he writes down his hadith. I said, why are you writing down his hadith? He said, so that I know those hadiths that he's telling. So if they fabricate them and add a correct isnad to them, I'll be able to identify them, so they won't go missed. So this is how far those experts, those scholars went to protect the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So now we understand all the conditions of Sahih Hadith. And as we said, we have the accepted hadith, that's Sahih with support, Hasan with support. And then we have the rejected, the da'if. Now, what do we mean by accepted? Accepted means we take our rulings from those hadiths. So we take halal, haram, we take mustahab, makruh, we take the sharia from those hadiths. For the rejected, the da'if, we do not take our religion from that. And there's also an important point that I want to make here. How about if one of the narrators is unknown? There is no good thing about him, there's no bad thing about him, it's just a name, we do not know who that person was. This is also makes the hadith da'if, because we do not take our religion from people that we don't know. So if there's an unknown narrator, that also makes the hadith rejected, not accepted. So the weak hadith, the da'if, is any hadith that lacks at least one of the conditions of the sahih hadith. So if the isnad is broken, like the missing narrators, either at the beginning, at the end, in the middle, any missing narrator makes the hadith da'if. If any of the narrators is not trustworthy or a liar, or if they have very poor accuracy, and obviously if there is a deviation, shudud or illah, hidden weakness in that hadith. Now this is called rejected hadith. We do not take our religion from those hadiths. So, dear brothers and sisters, now we come to the end of this lecture. So till the next one, stay safe inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.